Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're zeroing in on some pretty interesting moves in the AI space, specifically OpenAI rolling out their GPT 4.1 and GPT 4.1 mini models inside ChatGPT.
Right. These actually first showed up back in April, didn't they? Through the developer API.
Exactly. But now they're getting out to, well, a much wider audience. So our goal today, really unpack what these new models offer. Why is this broader release kind of a big deal? And maybe most importantly, what does it all mean for you?
Yeah. What's the practical takeaway?
We've been digging into it, and for this deep dive, our main source is a recent TechCrunch article covering this exact release.
A good overview, yeah.
Okay, let's just jump right in. What exactly are these new models, GPT 4.1 and the mini version?
So essentially, they're the latest versions of OpenAI's big language models. And the key thing is they're now integrated right into ChatGPT itself.
Okay.
It's a pretty big step, putting these more advanced AI capabilities into more people's hands. Think of GPT 4.1 as, well, their newest top-tier model for the moment, offers the most power.
And who gets which one? That's always a question, isn't it?
Right. So GPT 4.1, the main one, that's available if you subscribe to ChatGPT Plus, Pro, or Team.
The paying users.
Yep. If you're a paying subscriber, you should be able to access this more powerful engine now.
Makes sense. And what about, everyone else? Free users included?
Okay, so for both free and paying users, OpenAI is rolling out GPT 4.1 mini. It sort of brings some of the newer improvements to, well, everyone, basically.
Oh, okay.
You can see it as a more accessible version, but still, hopefully, an upgrade.
Interesting. So what happens to the models that were there before, like 4.0 mini?
Yeah, good question. As part of this whole shuffle, OpenAI has actually pulled GPT 4.0 mini out of ChatGPT for everybody.
Oh,
so it really looks like GPT 4.1 mini is stepping in to take its place for anyone not using the main GPT-4 model.
Got it. That clarifies the who gets what. Now, the big question, what can GPT 4.1 do? Like, what's the step forward here? What are its main strengths?
Well, the TechCrunch piece really highlights noticeable improvements in coding and following instruction.
Coding, okay.
Yeah, which is, super relevant for software engineers, people using ChatGPT for writing code, debugging stuff.
Right.
Imagine you're, stuck on a really tricky bug in some software. GPT 4.1 is meant to be better at understanding the whole picture and helping you find it.
That makes a lot of sense. So if you're a developer maybe banging your head against the wall with some code, GPT 4.1 might actually be like a noticeably better helper than what came before.
That's the idea. Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about accuracy. OpenAI also says GPT 4.1 is faster than their older O-series reasoning models.
The previous generation, right?
Yeah, those were their prior powerful models. So that speed boost, it can really matter when you're deep in a coding session or need quick answers to complicated questions.
Faster and better at coding. Okay, sounds like a solid upgrade. But like always with AI stuff, there's usually a bit more to the story.
Yeah.
The article mentions the initial launch and some controversy, or at least discussion around transparency.
Yes, that's definitely a layer here.
Yeah.
So while it's in ChatGPT now for everyone, or wider use, it first launched through that developer API back in April.
Right.
And that launch, well, it stirred up some debate in the AI research world.
What was the main issue? What were people talking about?
The big concern raised by researchers was about the lack of a safety report when it first came out on the API.
Oh.
These researchers were basically worried that OpenAI might be, lowering its standards for transparency as its models get more powerful.
That seems like a valid concern, right? Especially with how fast things are moving. So how did OpenAI respond?
Well, OpenAI's stance, according to the article, was that GPT 4.1, while, it's better and faster than their older O3 models,
Okay.
it doesn't quite meet their definition of a frontier model.
A frontier model, meaning they're absolute cutting-edge stuff.
Exactly. So their argument was, because it's not that, it didn't need the same super extensive safety reporting they usually do for those, potentially game-changing AI systems.
So they're drawing a line based on kind of their internal assessment of its power and risk compared to the absolute top end.
That's the gist of it. They quote Johannes Heideck, who's OpenAI's head of safety systems. He basically says, GPT 4.1 doesn't introduce new modalities or ones of interacting.
Okay.
And doesn't surpass O3 in intelligence.
Okay.
And he adds that this means the safety stuff, while still important, substantial even, is just different than for those frontier models.
Right. That gives some context to their thinking. It does seem, though, that OpenAI has also maybe partly in response, taken steps on the transparency front more broadly.
Yes, absolutely. And that timing is interesting, right? Happening alongside this wider ChatGPT release. OpenAI recently announced they're committing to publishing the results of their internal AI safety tests more regularly.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty direct nod to that earlier feedback. Where can people find this information?
They've launched a new thing called the Safety Evaluations Hub.
Ah, a hub.
Yeah, that's where they plan to share these findings. It feels like a move towards, building more trust and letting people see more of their process.
Definitely a positive step for anyone watching the safety side of things. Now, the TechCrunch article also puts this whole release into like a bigger picture, right? Especially around AI for coding.
Yes. And this part is really fascinating. It's about how AI is weaving itself deeper and deeper into software development. The article points out a couple of really big signs of this trend.
Okay, like what? Give us the highlights.
Well, first off, OpenAI is reportedly really close to sealing a deal, like a $3 billion deal to buy Windsurf.
Wow, $3 billion. What's Windsurf?
It's described as a very popular AI coding tool. So buying that's a huge investment. It basically screams that OpenAI sees a massive future in AI helping people code.
Yeah, $3 billion definitely sends a message. Suggests they think AI isn't just a helper, but maybe fundamental to coding soon. What else?
The article also mentions Google beefing up its Gemini chatbot, specifically making it better at connecting with GitHub projects.
Okay, so Google's active here too.
Right. It shows it's not just OpenAI. Other big players see the value, the need, perhaps, to give developers better AI tools.
So it's a broader trend then. AI getting tangled up much more deeply in how software actually gets made. That feels like a pretty big shift.
It really is. If you zoom out, all these moves suggest we're heading towards AI being, well, maybe not just a tool you choose to use, but almost an essential part of the whole software development process.
Okay, so we've hit the new models, what they do, the whole transparency discussion, and this wider context of AI coding tools. Let's bring it back to the listener. What does all this actually mean for you, whether you're an average user or, someone specific?
Right, the so what question. How does this actually touch your work or your day-to-day? Well, if you are a software engineer, these improvements in GPT 4.1, the better coding, the better instruction following that could genuinely make you more efficient.
Right.
Whether you're like generating boilerplate code, hunting down bugs, or just trying to figure out what some complex bit of code does, this updated model might just be a much better assistant. Think about the time you could save if it finds that nasty bug faster.
Yeah, potentially less time on the really frustrating bits, more on the bigger picture thinking.
That's the potential upside, yeah. And what if you're just a regular ChatGPT user, free or paid? Well, getting either the more powerful GPT 4.1 or the new GPT 4.1 mini means you're probably going to get better experience overall.
How so?
Could mean responses that are more accurate, more relevant.
Yeah.
The AI might understand what you're asking for a bit better. Just a generally more useful tool. GPT 4.1 is like the pro version, maybe, and 4.1 mini is the streamlined but still pretty good everyday version.
Sounds like good news pretty much across the board for ChatGPT users then. And what about people who are really tuned into the ethics and transparency side of AI?
For those of you really watching AI safety and transparency, OpenAI promising to publish more safety results, launching that hub, those are definitely things to note.
Okay.
Gives a slightly clearer window into how they're testing these things internally.
Yeah.
Helps build a more informed picture of the risks and what they're doing about them.
And just for anyone trying to keep up with the fire hose of AI news.
Yeah, the fire hose. For you, tracking these releases, plus things like that potential Windsurf deal, Google's Gemini updates, it paints a pretty clear picture. The focus on AI coding tools really highlights one major area where AI is set to make a big impact on how we work.
Okay, great summary. So just to recap quickly, OpenAI has put GPT 4.1 and GPT 4.1 mini into ChatGPT. GPT 4.1 has better coding skills, especially for subscribers.
Right.
We talked about that initial lack of a safety report and OpenAI's move towards more transparency with more regular safety evaluations.
Yep, through the new hub.
And finally, how this all fits into this bigger trend of AI becoming, well, much more involved in software development.
Exactly. We've seen how these maybe technical-sounding updates actually have real-world consequences for lots of different people. Developers, everyday users, anyone watching AI.
So here's something to chew on, maybe. Think about how this deeper integration of advanced AI into tools we use every day, like ChatGPT, how might that fundamentally change not just how we work, but also that whole balancing act, between pushing for more performance and ensuring transparency and safety in AI?
That's a big question.
Yeah. What other questions does this raise for you about where AI interaction is going and how we oversee it all? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.